안녕하세요. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the second day of the 10th International Conference on Global Citizenship Education. My name is Sunmi Ji from UpSeiU, and on behalf of the organizers, I would like to extend our heartfelt appreciation for your participation. We have an exciting program ahead today, featuring 2 plenary sessions and 6 concurrent sessions. As we move into today's agenda, I encourage you to take an active part, share your perspectives, exchange ideas, and engage in meaningful discussions. Without further delay, let us begin our Day 2 program. Now, I would like to introduce today's first segment, Plenary Session 3, exploring the role of GCED in fostering democratic communities. This session will focus on the importance of GCED in promoting democratic values, civic engagement, and societal resilience, and how it can equip learners with the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes necessary to actively participate in democratic process and counter democratic backsliding. To guide this important discussion, I am pleased to invite our moderator, Dr. Faria Khan, Program Specialist at UNESCO Regional Office in Bangkok. Faria, the floor is yours. Please give her a big round of applause.
Good morning. I hope you all had a chance to rest a bit after yesterday's very provocative and thought-provoking, sessions. Day 1 really offered us a panoramic view of the challenges before us, how disinformation and polarization can erode civic trust, how young people are seeking new spaces for dialogue, and how education needs to respond with urgency, creativity, and purpose. So we reflected together on how fragile civic life has become when facts are contested and when trust falters and when the most vulnerable voices are silenced. Yet, we also heard some very powerful ideas on the role of educators as champions, on the promise of dialogue to bridge seemingly unbridgeable gaps, and on the courage of youth to confront the post-truth divide. So let us hear maybe from one of the participants. Karina, you kindly offered to share your thoughts. Let's give the floor to Karina for a minute to just hear your reflections on yesterday's proceedings.
Very much. Thank you, Periel. Yes, to me, yesterday was both challenging but hopefully inspiring, because to me it reminded us of the challenges to democracy and the challenges to knowledge sharing in this era of post-truth. But it also reminded me that exclusion from democratic institutions is not new, and that for ages, marginal groups, youth have been seeking other ways to participate more directly in democratic political issues. And so it reminded me that our role as educators is to take on the message of more direct democracy and giving young people and marginalised groups, marginalised voice, the power to speak up and to tell that fact from fiction, to use dialogue, whether it is online or face-to-face in respectful manners, and to ensure that that role of storytelling comes through so that we can contextualise the information that is being given.
Thank you so much, Karina, for your very succinct summary. A round of applause for Karina. Thank you. So Today, we want to build on the dialogue yesterday as we turn to today's plenary session, and we want to focus from challenges to practice and possible solutions. So how can global citizenship education foster democratic communities that are resilient, cohesive, and just? And then how do we translate this vision into action in our classrooms, in our policies, and in our partnerships, so that open and participatory governance is not just an aspiration, but a real lived experience for all of us, for the young learners, and for our communities. So let's begin by reflecting together, and let's look at this picture, look at these images together. What do you think is the fundamental element to foster inclusive communities, and why? So I invite you all now to maybe turn to your neighbors, and if you're 3 on a table, that's fine. Turn to your neighbors and make a group of 2 or maximum 3 persons, and I invite you to discuss briefly in pairs this question on what do you think is the fundamental element fostering inclusive communities, and why? You'll have 2 minutes, and after these 2 minutes, I'm going to invite some of you to share your thoughts in the room. So let's begin. We have another minute for discussion. Okay. Let's wrap up. Okay, I'm going to ask some of you in the room, and I'm going to begin right at the back. So is there somebody in the last row who would like to share his or her thoughts? Do I see a hand up? Okay, who would like to go first? But okay, we've got a gentleman here. A round of applause for the gentleman. Okay.
Good morning to everybody. I am Narahari from Nepal. In my group, we discussed and found some basic elements. They are democratic culture, trust and empathy, participatory and collaborative decision making, and flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. We've got somebody here, and then the last, maybe the second row here, and then I'm going to take somebody right at the back, and I'd love to hear a youth voice or a woman's voice or any other voice, but from the back of the room. So please, over to you.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Nasir from Pakistan.
Yes.
Our group is of the view that first we need to respect the diversity and openness for others, and without any context, we need to dialogue with others. So this is what we think. So thank you.
Excellent. Diversity, that is so much at the core of the work we do. Okay, I'm going to cold call at the back, so unless you raise your hand, I'm going to just ask someone. I see a young lady at the back. Would you like to share, maybe right in the center table? Would you like to share your thoughts? Is that Rachel at the back? Rachel, why don't you share your thoughts? Yes. Okay, let's hear from you.
Thanks, Farial. I love being put on the spot. I think for me, it would be about inclusion and hearing from traditionally marginalised voices and hearing voices of many people. I think this is key to democratic participation. Democracy is the notion of inclusion. Thank you.
So I'm here. Okay, we've got a last volunteer here. Go, please, I'd love to hear from you. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, from the Philippines, I'm Daisy. For me, the most fundamental element in fostering democratic community is a free and a fair justice in majority. That's where it all starts. Citizens having real say in that governs them, speaking essentials like freedom of speech, rule of law, and protection of individual rights. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for all the participants who've shared their thoughts. And please hang on to these ideas, and let's carry these ideas with us as we move into the panel discussion. And I want to tell my friends at the back, I'm going to be calling on you in the next round, so be ready, okay? So now it is really my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce our panelists. So just a minute, please. We have a very distinguished panel today. Maybe can I have some movement here? So each speaker is going to have about 5 to 7 minutes. Let's begin with Professor Daniel Shugurensky, who's professor of at the Arizona State University. We have Mr. Rili Lapalainen, President Bridge 47. We have the distinguished Professor Andy Knight, University of Alberta. And last but not least, my colleague Carol Fracafan from UNESCO Headquarters, Section for Global Citizenship and Peace Education. Welcome, and we look forward to listening to all of you. Each panelist will share a short presentation. We will have then a discussion, and afterwards we'll have a speed dialogue to engage directly with one another. And finally, we'll conclude with some reflections and key takeaways. So without further ado, let us give the floor to Professor Daniel Shugurensky.
Thank you very much, Farial. Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I am coming from Arizona State University. I'm originally from Argentina, and I lived in Mexico, I lived in Canada, and now I'm in Arizona. And I will talk about, my main point will be that we need to make better connections between democratic innovations, the field of democratic innovations, and the field of citizenship education. So you recognize this picture from the previous slide. That's a picture in one of our schools in Arizona. And the quote is a quote from the conference organizers. And it says, democracy flourishes when diverse perspectives converge through dialogue, fostering common ground and collective solutions. This is a quote that resonated with me, is part of the organization of this panel, and this is exactly what we are trying to do with something what we call school participatory budgeting, and I will talk about this in a moment. So the conference organizers put 3 questions for us to consider. The first is, how can we improve the future citizens? How can we empower the future citizens of democratic societies? So the empowerment question was question number 1. The question number 2 that was posed to us was, what innovative pedagogical approaches can promote civic engagement and deliberative practices? And the third question that the conference organizers put to us was, what governance structures can nurture social cohesion, trust, and a culture of peace? So I think these are very important questions, and my purpose here is to address these 3 questions with one proposal. So my proposal is that we need to connect the field of democratic innovations and citizenship education. Using the language of SDGs is when 4.7, target 4.7, which is about global citizenship education, meets 16.7, which is about participatory democracy, more democratic, accountable, participatory, and responsive institutions. So we know from yesterday that democracy is in crisis. We know that we have lots of problems with democracy. There is a dissatisfaction around the world with democracy as it is. One solution to this is more autocracies. The other solution is to democratize democracy, to make democracy more democratic. And so in the field of democratic innovations, I will mention just 4 democratic innovations that are now being implemented around the world: participatory budgeting, participatory policy making, citizen assemblies, and legislative theater. On the side of democratic, the knowledge, attitudes, and skills and practices, democratic competencies that we need to promote among our students. So most citizenship education curricula say that we want to nurture students who become more informed, critical, engaged, and caring citizens. So how can we do that? So my proposal is to connect these 2 fields, democratic innovations and citizenship education. And I cannot talk about all the 4 democratic innovations, but I'll mention just one, which is participatory budgeting. This is a book that we just published last year with school participatory budgeting experiments around the world in different countries. And it has different principles. Among them is, I would say, just for the sake of time, 2 main characteristics of school participatory budgeting that are different from other project-based learning in citizenship education is that A, it is real, it's authentic, it's not a simulation, it is with real resources in which students deliberate and make decisions about a portion of the budget of the school to make decisions to improve their school. And second, it involves the entire school community, not just a group of students, but the entire school community. So it's a process, a democratic process of deliberation and decision-making that connects participatory democracy and citizenship education.
Fantastic.
So these are the main characteristics. It's solution-oriented, it's inclusive, it's real, it's project-based learning, and includes together deliberation and decision-making. And I will finish with 2 quotes. Paulo Freire, education does not change the world, education changes people, and people change the world. And then Pablo Casals, the cellist player from Spain, the love of one's country is a splendid thing, but why should love stop at the border? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Shugorensky, for highlighting, how participatory innovations enrich and shape citizenship education. So thank you very much. And now let's turn to Riley for your presentation on global differences and human similarities.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and really happy to be here again. I think that it's really, really important that we also have the continuity and really coming together and having these kind of places where we can really learn from each other, because I think that the learning is the key word So I'm representing the global organization called Bridge 47. The bridge comes from that we would like to bring all the value-based educations together, including global citizenship education, peace education, human rights education, etc. Plus, we would like to promote SDG 4.7, so the number 47 comes from that point of view. And we were very much involved in that time where the whole Agenda 2030 was negotiated, and we are really happy that exactly, especially the global citizenship education and the other value-based educations, formal education, informal education, and non-formal education, including lifelong learning, are now as a part of the Sustainable Development Goals. And that's our mission. We really would like to support how we can really make that real. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples in a minute on that. But where I would like to start is that every child who's born to this world, we have to believe that that is a good person. But then what really matters is the environment, how much that is impacting on the future of the child. And I think that it's really important that there are the good values which really refers to us. And this first picture where you can really see the three ladies in this one up left, it's the summary of the values. It's 500,000 different kind of statistics and surveys collected all over the world. I think that it was more than 150 different languages. It's a collection of the values which really unites all the people. And there are 56 values which everybody shares. And I'm just telling you I'm sure that you can't really see that because I can't see that, but I can tell you that what are the first 10 ones, which really unites all of us in the world. So the first one is family. Second one is the relationships. Third one is the financial security. Fourth one is belonging. Fifth one is the community. And I think that these, as an examples, really tells that we are the one big family in this world, but we need to really then think about the next picture, which is there in the right up, which tells about some kind of what we are seeing, which is the top of the iceberg, which is above the water, where we really see, which is more about this. We're sitting now here in the conferences, we are meeting the people, but we don't really know what's behind. And I think that we need to, if we really would like to make the good, some kind of changes and really supporting the people's good development, we need to go deeper. And then we are going back to the ethics and all the values. And I think that there's a lot of potential to really support the good development amongst of the people. And then I'm coming back on this global and local and taking two examples that what we are doing, for example, in the Bridge 47. One of our missions is really the advocacy, because we really believe that it needs to have the better recognition for the whole work what the Global Citizenship Education SDG 4.7 is doing. And I'm taking two examples at the moment which are in the global level. The first one is the reform of the United Nations. And many of you might think about that, yeah, it's something there in the global and doesn't really resonate to my life at all. But indeed, it did. It's really, really important that how we are organizing this global governance. I think that we all have benefited a lot on the multilateralism. I'm just taking the couple of international agreements as an example, like the climate agreement. We have excellent ocean agreement just negotiated in the UN level. We have the plastic agreement, etc. So we all benefit about that, what is organized and joint agreed in the global level. And I think that it's really important that we also discuss about, we as a global citizens, we can have the role to play back home to talk about what the UN, what the multilateralism means and how we can really contribute on that. There's one campaign going on. There's one for 8 billion, which means that there should be the female United Nations Secretary General. This is one example. Another one is that would it be the World Parliament as one example. So I think that these are the cases where we could really be involved and really highlighting the voices. And the other example is the whole Agenda 2030 implementation. We are unfortunately very much on back on that, and I think that the SDG 4.7 is fundamentally important tool to make that really, so that we can really reach all the goals. Thanks a lot.
Would you want to share your quote?
Perhaps I can just be quickly saying that one of the quotes, what I would like to highlight is that I am because we are. It's called Ubuntu in the Zulu language, and I think that really tells a lot on that, where I think that how we should think about that not only me can solve the problems, but we can all together make that solution. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this very beautiful quote and also for showing us the linkages between the global and the local and how that shapes the work that we do at the community level. So thank you very much, and let us now go to Professor Knight. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, colleagues and friends. It's a privilege to be here in Seoul to talk about this very important element of global citizenship education and its role in fostering democratic institutions. I want to speak with a sense of urgency. Urgency because democracy, the very system that gives legitimacy to governance, is in retreat across the world, not just in the United States, but right across the world. So my presentation really is titled From Good Governance to Global Citizenship, Reclaiming Democracy in a Time of Backsliding. I will not go through my entire paper. I think it's going to be available by the organizers of the conference later on. But I wanted to just sort of speak to a few points here. Slide number 2. As recently as 1970, there were about 40 democracies worldwide. And after the Cold War, 1989 roughly, we witnessed what Larry Diamond called the third wave of democracy, where more than 120 states claiming to be democratic system emerged. The United Nations, of course, invested billions of dollars to support this transition, hoping that democracy would become a universal norm. And in fact, it really did become a universal norm, I think, to a large extent in the post-Cold War period. But the optimism has given way to fragility. Around the world, we see democratic institutions under siege. Elections are held, yes, but the deeper culture of democracy is often absent. Slide number 3. Let's be clear, democracy without good governance is an empty shell. And today, governance is in crisis. Take a look at what's going on in the United States today. Trump 2.0 has intensified democratic backsliding with his attacks on electoral integrity, with attacks on politicization of the judiciary, with deliberate disinformation. All these things have actually weakened trust in our institutions. And this has a ripple effect, not just in North America, but around the world. And if you look at Africa, we've seen coups, military coups in Niger, in Mali, in Burkina Faso, and Guinea. Fragile institutions and corruption has undermined democratic commitments despite the African Charter, which is a charter on democracy. So I think, next slide, please. If you look at the Middle East as well, I just want to say that in the Middle East, we've had, in large part, the reversal of the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring, which sort of held up a lot of hope for democracy, has largely vanished. And the same thing we can say about South Korea, a place where we felt that resilient democracy was in place. We've seen rising polarization, as we heard yesterday, which makes us believe that no democracy is immune from challenge. We need to move beyond ballots. We need to move beyond elections. Elections, there's a great myth that ballots will be enough for democracy, but they're not. And they do not guarantee freedom, fairness, or justice. And democracy requires at least four things, I would say. Participation that goes beyond the vote, inclusivity so that women, youth, minorities, and other marginalized groups are central to the decision-making, accountability through checks and balances and transparency, and respect for rights is a non-negotiable foundation of legitimacy. Without these, elections cannot be considered legitimate, and we can have a return to authoritarianism, as we noticed happening in the States. Now, the United Nations system has done a relatively good job, as I mentioned before, of trying to promote democracy. From Namibia to South Africa, Cambodia to El Salvador, the UN has supported over 100 countries in building institutions and running elections. And the Millennium Development Goals, as well as the Sustainable Development Goals, this also helps to shore up this norm of democracy. But the UN also faces a democratic deficit in itself, especially in the Security Council. And we must do more than simply focus on the elections and election procedures, and must champion inclusive governance and human dignity. Now, in reclaiming democracy, I would make 3 points. We have to deepen democracy locally and nationally, making sure that governance is responsive and inclusive. We have to broaden democracy globally, reforming international institutions, including the United Nations, to close its own democratic deficit. And then we have to embed global citizenship education at every level of education in society, so that democracy is lived not just in terms of parliaments, not just in terms of constitutions, but in the classrooms, in communities, in everyday civic and practice. So in conclusion, colleagues, I would have to say that democracy is under siege, from Trump 2.0 in the United States to coups in Africa, authoritarian retrenchment in the Middle East, polarization in South Korea. Democratic communities everywhere are vulnerable. But democracy remains humans' best hope for peace, for justice, and dignity. So let me leave you with one thought. Democracy is not secured in the ballot box alone. It flourishes only when governance is inclusive, when governance is accountable, and when it's rooted in the protection of human dignity. So if we want to take global citizenship education seriously, I think we can reclaim democracy not just as an institution, but as a way of life. Thank you very much.
Human rights and human dignity, I think that says it all in a nutshell. So thank you so much for sharing your, some international trends, but then also the role of multilateralism and global governance, and the need for reforms at the global level for changes to really happen also at the local levels. So this is really interesting. I think we are now moving towards our last panelist, Carol, and over to you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation to be here today. So I work for UNESCO in a section that deals with global citizenship and education for peace. And one of the big achievements of that section in the past year has been the adoption in 2023 of the recommendation on education for peace, human rights, global citizenship, and sustainable development, which sort of provides now the international framework in education on a number of challenges and issues that we have been discussing in the past days. And in this respect, I wanted today to highlight a specific dimension of our work and of the recommendation, and I should say of global citizenship education, which we think is often overlooked by member states in education. I'm talking about education about violent pasts. This, in our view, should be the object of more efforts to address some of the challenges of the time: disinformation, decline of the quality of democratic dialogue, and also a way to better sustain trust in the institutions that guarantee the rule of law. Martin Luther King said, peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. And here he meant also historical justice, the fact that future peace, and not merely stability, but really living together in harmony, depends on how historical wrongs are being dealt with. And in a world where the truth holds little value, and where the very principal foundations of democratic dialogue are under attack, we think that it's more important than ever. And that's why we've decided to produce some guidance for member states on how to deal with a violent past, controversial histories, traumatic past, you call it the way you want. The book is out this week. Let me try to summarize, if we can go back to the previous slide, in this endeavor in 4 points. First, the past does not really pass away, even though violent pasts are commonly approached and taught as historical episodes. They are of highly contemporary relevance, and experiences of violence fundamentally shape identities and frame relationships between individuals and communities for generations to come. Their legacies continue to affect the well-being of victim groups and the descendant, and sometimes the society as a whole. They define social, economic, political patterns, including through ongoing discrimination, material inequalities, and therefore influence wider national narratives. So educating about past violence is in fact very much educating critically about power imbalances and struggles between citizens and communities nowadays, about the present injustices within our own societies, and very importantly, their latent potential for violence. Let's not forget that. And this is why not dealing with the past poses a risk for democracy. Ideologies that seek to divide and to exclude fester on disinformation about the crimes of the past, because acknowledging them, acknowledging the crimes of the past, question the inequalities of the present. It threatens the perpetrators and their heirs, and it introduces complexity, it introduces critical thinking, and the very critical thinking that they seek to undermine. So dealing with the past is therefore a way to address and to counter some of the core strategies of populist, and I would say populist nationalist narratives, such as historical silencing, such as dangerously denial of genocide is an issue in many parts of the world, and I should say it is often, in some cases, a conspiracy theory that really seeks to accuse the victim group of exaggerating the crime for their own benefits, therefore reactivating the very prejudices that have led to the crime. Distortion also is one of the strategies, a soft version of denial. And let's not be mistaken about this kind of rhetorical or strategies or discourses. The aim is to harm the victim group and the memory of the victims. So we must stay vigilant. On the contrary, I would say global citizenship education is about critical thinking. It's about dialogue among citizens and affected and with affected communities about how the past is told and remembered. And therefore, engaging with the past carries a certain conception of civic knowledge, attitudes towards public participation and everyday actions to create more equitable and socially just conditions. And fundamentally, this is GCED. Third point, education should commit to positively influence how generations today approach the future and commit to repairing fractured societies. This is what we call at UNESCO, or we tend to call more and more, educating for reparative future. This is a concept that was coined in the course of the preparation of this important publication, Futures of Education, by a group of researchers. And the idea here is really to revisit education and history education in particular, to open up spaces for the experiences of people whose histories have been silenced or made marginal and whose victimization has been ignored and contested. So they are recognized, so they are explored and debated in ways that learners understand the impact of past violence and that it has on contemporary social structures and identities, and make sense somehow of the world the way it is. I'm soon finished. So it means that education and history education should be guided somehow by a form of ethics of listening and dialogue, and this was mentioned yesterday, with a clear goal to redress past injustices through a collective process. I insist on those terms, which are keywords of GCED, collective process, to foster a sense of solidarity with affected communities and within the society as a whole. Very last point. Why is dealing with violent history so fundamental to the promotion of global citizenship education and so relevant to today's discussions about the state of democracy? Because the central pivot of processes of dealing with the past is public trust, both a pillar and a horizon of democracy. In other words, if the purpose of democracy is the constitution of a community of citizens with equal rights, interacting in a social pact anchored in the rule of law, democracy is at risk of remaining flawed and fragile as long as there is no engagement with the massive human rights violations of the past.
Thank you so much, Carol.
I'm finishing, just one last word. And I would say all societies are somehow conflicted and fractured, and all of them bear the scars of the past. And the role of global citizenship in that respect should really be to try to strive to address them for truth, for justice, for reparation, and for security as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was powerful. Thank you. But you also have a publication that you were sharing. You want to just tell us?
Yes, so here is the QR code. If you click on it, you'll reach the link where the publication is supposed to be put online. I'm not sure it's online yet, but it will be in the coming hours or days. This is a policy guide, so it's really for education policymakers on addressing violent past through education.
So, thank you. So, I mean, the key message here is our past matters, and we need to face it. We need to face our history, our past, to move forward with strengthened dialogue in a collaborative way. I mean, this is very difficult. I mean, coming from the region I come from myself, we've seen firsthand the challenges to make that happen. But having said that, let's begin now. A round of applause for the panelists. Let's begin with a round of applause. And let's now take a deeper dive into, we've just listened to 4 very enriching presentations. But I'd like to begin with Carol first. If you can briefly give us some of the primary learning objectives when dealing with violent pasts, and how do they strengthen global citizenship education?
So yes, really to be concrete.
We have about 2 minutes to 3 minutes.
Yeah. To be concrete, and I would say this is really for teachers eventually and how they deal with it in their classroom. 4 points quickly. So the first objective is really to try to strengthen historical literacy and critical thinking. So it's really teaching education in the spirit of how do we know what we know. I think this is really important to understand how narratives about violent pasts have developed over time and how they can be discussed and criticized as well. This goes hand in hand with an effort to foster multiple perspectives about the past and promote a culture of remembrance that is based on scientific research and democratic dialogue that will help society to come up with a form of consensus, a past that is somehow usable. And I want to use that term in a positive sense, based on the acknowledgement, and this is non-discussable, based on the acknowledgement of the wrongs committed. This is a right to know, and eventually, possibly a right for justice and a right for reparation. 3, explore the conditions that lead to extreme violence. This is the preventative aspect of that educational endeavor. Prejudices, discrimination, hate speech, we know that if tolerated, unchecked, can result in massive human rights violations and atrocity crimes. So this is really a very important element of that educational endeavor. And of course, and that's what I said earlier, try to make sure that learners understand the impact and the long-term damage of past violence in their contemporary social structures.
Thank you so much. That's really, so let's hold on to these messages and let's move to Andy. Maybe how can global citizenship then move beyond teaching about elections and political institutions to cultivating the values, skills, behaviors, and civic practices that make democracy resilient and communities, genuinely participatory and inclusive?
I think that's a very important question. I'm a professor, I'm a teacher, obviously, and I spend a lot of time in the classroom talking about elections and political institutions, and it's all kind of abstract for people. I think we need to be able to cultivate values and skills and civic practices that make democracy more resilient, make democracy and communities more genuinely willing to participate in an inclusive way in what we consider to be democracy. I think it's very important for us to remember, and I want to repeat this again, that voting is not the answer to democracy. I mean, we have Iran, they're voting every 4 or 5 years. It doesn't make the country any more democratic. We have to be able to have a bottom-up version of democracy, which is coming from the culture, the value system of individuals, and rising up. And also, I think, to think about this in terms of global terms, I'm insistent that global institutions like the United Nations have to set an example when it comes to democracy. And the democratic deficit that's present within the United Nations Security Council needs to be corrected. Otherwise, the United Nations is going to be a decision frozen in time, frozen in 1945 time. We mentioned all the countries that have become democratic over the years. Do they all have a chance to contribute to decision-making at the international level? What avenues are we giving them to contribute in a meaningful way to decisions that affect their people? If that's not happening at the United Nations, then where else is it going to happen? So to me, it's a two-tier process, the top-down and the bottom-up. I like to think of democracy as being as mainly coming from the bottom-up.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the important point I would like to leave with you.
Absolutely. So the grassroots up, communities, but preparing the communities and the learners and the younger generations. So listening to Andy, Daniel, what can be done then in schools to promote democracy?
Thank you. Following up on Andy about his comment about the bottom-up and top-down approaches, and I also come from academia, and I spent half of my life in academia criticizing what was wrong in the world, and the other half of my time was preaching what should be done, the normative claims. Now, in my time now in academia, I work with NGOs and with schools trying to make the transition between what is wrong and what should be done, and the normative claims. So I think there are two things that could be done in schools, and back to my original points. Number one is to rethink and reimagine citizenship education. Citizenship education in most parts of the world is teaching about democracy, which is good to learn about democracy, but we also teach through democracy. So experiential learning, project-based learning, back to John Dewey. So how can we make the learning of democracy a lived experience, as it was said before, and how can students learn democracy by doing democracy? That's number one. and become engaged, informed, critical, and caring citizens. And the second part of this agenda is to make schools more democratic, make schools more democratic institutions. How can we think that we are going to nurture democratic citizens in authoritarian institutions? So the schools are the first institution that students come across with in life. So the more democratic they are, the more they learn that there is another way to think about democracy that is not just about elections. And this connects with the issue of closing the civic engagement gap, which in reality is a civic engagement opportunity gap. So how do you create more opportunities for civic engagement for the students who are less engaged? And I will finish with the comments that were made from the tables here that I think are very relevant in what needs to be done. Yesterday, it was said that the opportunities for democratic agency build commitments to democracy. I agree with that. Number two, it was said before that we need more participatory and collaborative processes of decision-making, and we need more dialogue and more diversity, and the inclusion of marginalized voices. And my point is that school participatory budgeting is one tool among others that can achieve these goals. Thank you.
Fantastic. If we can only do that.
Well, we're doing that in many schools around the world. We're doing it. It is being done. It is being done.
That's brilliant to learn. So, to really building on what has just been discussed, how would you then say, how can everyone, be a global citizen?
Yes, indeed, and I think that's really is the key question to all of us. First of all, I know that we are living very hard times at the moment, but I think that we really should try to see that in the positive moment, opportunity for all of us. So really thinking the life is really the very, very unique adventure. And it really, we can really influence a lot by ourselves, that what is our attitude, how we really would like to see ourselves to playing the role in this planet. So I'm really encouraging all of us to be very open and be very curious, asking from your neighbors how the situation is, how you can learn from that person, how to really help us as well. So I think that we have a lot of opportunities in the world, and we should definitely use 24 hours per day to really using the learning from the world and from other people. So that's our right, and I think we have to really benefit and use that in the most maximum level. But then we have the responsibilities as well. I think it's to the other side of the coin. The responsibilities means that we need to respect all the human beings, but also the nature. And that's really important, that we really, how we behave, it really matters in everyday life, and that's really important to have those two aspects on that. And how we should live, I'm quoting my quote, what I mentioned earlier, this Ubuntu. I am because we are. So I think it really tells a lot on that none of us, we can't really, as one person, make the change, but collectively, we can really turn the wave to the better direction. And that's why I think we can really help each other in whatever positions we are. We are the members of the families, or we have the relatives, we are the working or studying or doing whatever in the organizations where we are, but we can consume, we can or less consume, where we can vote, we can be in many roles in the lives, and I think that really is the place what we need to, by the curiosity, also learning, but also contributing for the collective good.
Wow. So what I'm hearing from all of you is basically that, the participatory culture then begins to flourish when education or global citizenship education enables experiential learning, learning by doing, reflection and action at all levels. And this can be nurtured through our learning systems, from schools to communities to the larger society. So this is really, so there is hope for all of us. I'm hearing that we can do some concrete things which will take us in that direction. So a big round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much. And now I would like to invite all of you in the room to stand up. We will now do a speed dialogue. So you must be tired of sitting down all this time. So how about we all stand up? And so we are going to do a speed, move yourselves, relax, enjoy a bit. So this activity provides a space to reflect on the session this morning, to reflect on some of the key takeaways and to connect with the other friends in the room, but people you haven't spoken with before from across the globe. So let's turn the spotlight to all of you. This speed dialogue is designed so that we can meet new people, exchange new ideas, and bring some fresh new voices into the conversation. So here's how it's going to work. Please stand and find a partner in the room you haven't spoken with yet. You'll have 4 minutes to introduce yourself. So begin with your name, your country, your role, just a quick introduction, but then start exchanging. Wait a minute, listen. No, hang on. And exchange some answers to 2 key questions. So what are the 2 key questions? What are your key takeaways from the session so far? And what actions will you take when you return home? We are going to do, hey, I need your attention, guys and ladies. We are going to do 3 rounds. So please switch partners each time you hear the bell ring. And can we give them a demo of how the bell will ring? Can we ring the bell? Woo. Go. 1, 3, 2, 1, go. Thank you. Natural and there's been a flow. You were so structured. Thanks to her. No, thanks to you. You make it easy for us. And thank you. Really. Yeah, it's a really interesting. I've enjoyed this also. So, you can also discuss with anybody you want. Because the last word will be all of you, 1 minute each. How are we doing time, guys? Overall time for the session? How many? Whole session? Yeah, it's like 10:30. So we still have 30 minutes more. Yes. Time for 3 rounds. And then 4 panelists.
Yeah, that's perfect.
How is it going? It's wonderful, and you have done a fab job, Priya. I'm enjoying it. नहीं होती find someone?
Yes, I am finding.
Oh, find Jisoo. Find Jisoo. No, Jisoo from Pakistan. Meet from Pakistan. She's my We work together. She was the pillar of our program. Okay. 30 seconds.
Thank you so much.
Okay, time to switch partners. Let's switch partners. The next 4 minutes have begun, so you'd better switch partners. Woohoo. Switching partners. Find a new partner, someone you haven't spoken with yet. Switch partners? Switch?
Switch, yeah, I switched.
Ah, do you know each other?
Yeah.
Oh. No! Cheating! Find a new friend. He's my colleague too. Oh, yeah, he just- Can I call on one of you afterwards? mic. Time's up. Time for the third round. Round 3. Time's up. Find a new partner. Time for a new partner. Time. Hi. Hello. Can we have a conversation? I'm having fun.
You're doing great.
I'm enjoying myself.
Wow.
I'm going to call on some youngsters from the back now to speak up.
You are energizing people.
She's very good, Young Lee, Yuzhang Lee, the lady who worked with me. You know, last night in the bus, she was sitting next to me. I think 3 minutes to go, and then we will first. Better to ask them first so that they'll be energized. Let's hear from them first. Okay. 30 seconds to go, and then I'll be calling on you. Okay, time's up. Back to our seats. Yeah. Please come. I need 3 volunteers now. I want to begin right from the back. Who would like to share your key takeaways? Who wants to share your key takeaways? Some volunteers from the back? I want to begin from the back and move up front. So I take note, you want to do it, right? Okay, we have a hand there at the back. There's a young lady at the back. Please, over to you. Would you like to stand up, introduce yourself, and give us the 3 takeaways?
Hi, my name is In-hye. I'm from Korean National Commission for UNESCO. Actually, me and my colleagues are here for the conference to get a takeaways for our projects that we are having right now in our commission, which is Bridge program. We mainly give the literacy education to several countries right now, and the key takeaways that we got from the previous panel is that how can we actually incorporate the aspect of global citizenship education to our current literacy education program, because now currently to a certain point we are actually incorporating that aspect, but we still think there's more room for us to maybe overcome banking type of education and have more room for the democratic system, or maybe the format of education, instead of just giving one direction of education to students. So mainly that's what we have discussed today with me and my colleagues, and one of the panels actually suggested that learning by doing for democracy. So it's we all know that it's important for us to teach students the elements of democracy in and of itself, but like having the system, the democratic system itself is actually going to help us to deliver what we want to deliver to students. So yeah.
Thank you so much. A round of applause. Thank you for beginning the dialogue. Who would like to go next? Okay, there's a table here and there's a lady here in the front. So let's do some front and then we go back again in the middle of the room. So we have 2 ladies in the front. We want to hear some youth voices as well.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Luis from Iloilo City, Philippines. My key takeaways for this morning's session are the following. If we would want to continue engage people in terms of having active and informed participation in this time of democracy backsliding, I believe the active participation of people is the key to fostering democratic communities. We can start this by training our children at home, at school, and even our co-workers or colleagues at the workplace, as it ensures engaged citizens who understand and stand for their rights, the rights of others, hold leaders accountable, and promote inclusivity for a fair and effective democracy. If we want to continue enjoying our freedom, I believe also that we have to confront our historical wounds, because they may get infected again. So we need to confront the painful past, and find ways to address them. Thank you so much, and good morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There's a lady here, and then from my country, Pakistan. I saw there was, and then we would like to have some voices, maybe from some youth participants as well.
This is Dr. Tabassum Nas from Pakistan. My takeaway was that, as one of the panelists said, that democracy is beyond the ballots. And I agree with him, and in my opinion, and one of the panelists also reiterated that we should do the democracy for learning it, but while we discussed it in the speed dialogue, actually democracy is not something by doing like we can't have it only by doing it. In the school case, we normally get the examples that most of the schools, they have the students' parliaments and student councils, but actually this is what this is the democracy by doing. But in my opinion, democracy is a mindset. We have to develop this mindset, and it could be from the home, from the school, and we should empower ourselves and our students and our kids to take part in the decision making, basically. So in this way, they can analyze the things and can develop the democratic behavior and critical mindset. Thank you.
Participatory decision making, this is so important. It's not just to come to the room and participate in a dialogue, but to actually shape decisions and to enable learners to do that. That's really important. Thank you for raising that. Who would like to share some cutting edge ideas, some new thoughts? Over. I see your hand right at the back. Excellent. And then there's a hand here. So we've got two more. Wonderful.
I'm a teacher of college English in South Korea, and I would like to ask questions to the panel if it's possible. My question is, how do you define democracy? So this has been a question that's been lingering from yesterday, that we might not be all very clear about what democracy is. And we can look up online, there are definitions of democracy, but I think I would like to ask actually, like all panels or everyone, how do you define democracy? How do you understand democracy? Okay. And then another question is from yesterday, I started sort of question about democracy. Is it a universal norm, really? Democracy has its dark past. It's founded on very exploitation, maybe, and it has its contradictions. So can you really justify that it is a universal norm? Okay, so that's been a question. And maybe thirdly, I'm a very strong proponent of GCED, and I have identified core values of GCED like peace, human rights, justice, and diversity. But how am I supposed to situate democracy in this whole framework? Can you maybe give us the relationship of democracy and other components maybe of GCED? So maybe 3 questions, if that's okay. So how do you define democracy? How can you justify democracy? Yes. Okay.
Thank you so much. These are not easy answers to these questions, but I think we are going to ask our panel to address them in a minute. We'll just take our last key takeaway from this table, and then we'll turn to the panel and ask you to answer some of these very important questions that have just been raised, and also share your last key takeaways before we wrap up for today. So,
I'm sorry, this is not my takeaway, this is my question.
Okay, that's fine.
And my name is Yuvraj Gautam from Nepal. This is the 18th time I raised my hand, and I got noticed for the first time. This is what is the ill of democracy. Because this table is the margin, and it is because the panelists or the state which is on the stage saw this side quite easily. I'm not blaming. And this is the 18th time I raised my hand and I got noticed. Democracy is still evolving from Athenian democracy to inclusive democracy. I'm just connecting this. Even the inclusive democracy is being elite captured. So in this light, my question is to Professor Carroll. So in the name of repairing the past, we also practiced repairing the past, maintaining compensational justice in Nepal, but still it is elite capture. The marginalized, once marginalized community, marginalized group, when they reach the power, they still marginalize the one from that same community who have not got access. And this eel of inclusive democracy is still transferred in the classroom as well. So how can we solve this problem? And what can be the role of GCED to repair this or solve this problem? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad we noticed your hand on your 18th attempt, and happy it worked out. And thank you for your question. So thank you to all participants for sharing your thoughts. And now we turn to the panel to respond to the questions that have been raised and to share also your key takeaways as we conclude this session. So who would like to begin with some of the responses? Carol, you want to begin? And then we'll just maybe go like this.
Okay, I'll try to sort of round all these very, very complex questions. And I'd say, I mean, hearing what you just said, sir, I mean, there are, and what we've heard today, yesterday, is there are many, many reasons not to be optimistic. There are also good grounds for optimism, but sometimes I feel, if I may be a bit personal, that it's hard not to fall into cynicism nowadays when it comes to looking at the state of democracy. I think democracy is a very fragile regime because it does not rely only on the institutions, but very much on what citizens do with them. I think it's very easy to destroy democracy, and we know that it's very easy to destroy from within the system itself, but it's extremely difficult to build. It costs sacrifices, it requires courage, and it costs a lot of lives as well. So I think, to go back to the issue of education, that we should try to make, let's say in general, peace, and in particular democracy, the pulse of education systems. We should educate for democracy. And I don't mean that it's a specific type of education. I mean that education systems should have as an ultimate goal the realization of that imperfect regime that is democracy. That's a goal, but that is also a process. Democracy, if I may answer your question about the definition of the regime, I like to define it as a frame of intangible principles and universal principles that allow for the dialogue between relative truths. And I would say that it is sometimes best defined as a process that needs constantly to be cultivated by its citizens. And this can be somehow reflected into the educational processes themselves. And this is how you can materialize democracy. This is how you can teach about it. It's about teaching the practice of democracy, I would say. And therefore, education in that respect is not only about literacy, it's not only about professional competences. I would say it's not even only about values, because they can be manipulated, they can be turned upside down, as we know very well from the past, but it's very much about civic attitudes and civic engagement. And I think this should be core to any educational endeavor.
Thank you so much. A minute each as we wrap up, or a minute and a minute and a half. We've got 4 minutes left, so over to you.
All right. Let me get to the question which I think is on everybody's mind, and that is the definition of democracy. I think as academics, we always should start with defining our terms. So I'm glad that that question was raised. But democracy, for me, is a system of governance, right? That's vested in the people who are supposed to keep their leaders in check, right? Democracy is a process, a governing process that's supposed to be vested in the power of the people. And elections, therefore, are only just one mechanism for what we call indirect democracy, in the sense that, with larger and larger populations, we don't have the ability to be directly involved in decision-making. So we elect representatives to go to Parliament or to go to the Congress, whatever, to represent us. So it does have something to do with elections, but that's not the only thing. It has to do with equal application of the rule of law. It has to do with the protection of individuals' rights and all people's rights. It also has to do with the protection of community rights. And sometimes we fail in Western societies to include the community rights as being important. And there has to be accountability and transparency in any democratic system. Corruption is one of the killers of democracy. So that accountability, transparency is very important. And we talked this morning, we were talking about inclusiveness. And it's one thing to talk about inclusiveness, but you have to include everyone, right?
Absolutely.
The minority groups have to be included in the discussion, not just the majority, not just the rich, but also the poor, not just the men, but also the women, not just individuals who recently came to North America, but also the indigenous people who were there before. So it has to be inclusive in that sense and participatory. Everyone has to participate in it. Pluralism is very important to democracy, so is tolerance, and so is civil engagement. So those are the main, I think, thrusts of what we want to talk about. Now, democracy is not set in stone, and I'm glad we had that discussion yesterday. Democracy is an evolving thing. In fact, I would like to use a colleague of mine called Tim Shaw as an example. He always talks about democracies because he felt that there was not just one set democracy. Our problem is that we are so wedded to a Western and European-centric notion of democracy that we think that we have the right formula for democracy to then foist this onto other people. And that's not right. That's why I think democracy has to grow from the bottom up, as I mentioned before. I think I'll leave it there. Sorry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and exactly you answered partly what I wanted to say, but I think that exactly defining the democracy is really the living process as well. And for me, it's to leave no one behind. That's really implementing that principle so that we can really organize all the organizations in the right manner so that everybody is heard. There's the role, there's places for dialogue, for participation, all the voices to be heard on that. I think that's absolutely fundamentally important. And that was the message when I was talking, a couple of you, where it came from many of your discussions as well. And I think that exactly what we really need to find out at the moment is that what's our role as a global citizens is also helping the governments to find the solutions. I think that's one of the points, again, coming the point from your side, that what's the role of the citizens vis-a-vis for the member states who are fighting at the moment. But I think we really have the role to play, and we can do that in our capacities, what we're having. But understanding that exactly none of the solutions are not coming automatically in the right way. It's a process to learn, and we need to accept about that process to learn as well. But I think that it's still, we should have some kind of ambitious that we would like to build a better world, and that's our responsibility as a global citizens to contribute on this common good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, really. And last but not least.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, we can talk about democracy for hours and hours, and we talked about free and fair elections, we talked about competitive parties, we talked about institutions, division of powers, etc. I would say there are three main principles in democracy: equality, freedom, participation. These are the key three principles. But basically, democracy is how we humans make decisions together. What type of institutions, what type of processes do we set up to make decisions together? And we don't learn to be democratic by chance. It's not that we are born democratic. Nobody's born democratic. So the question is, how do we nurture democratic citizens, and how do we improve the fragile and imperfect democracies that we have? Those are the two tasks that we have. How do we make better citizens? How do we make better democracies? And my contribution to this panel is that one of the best ways to improve democracy and improve the development of democratic citizens is by creating opportunities in schools, in communities, to practice democracy, to learn democracy by doing. If one of the best ways to learn how to swim is swimming, one of the best ways to learn democracy is by doing democracy, by practicing conflict resolution, by listening to each other, by finding solutions together to our problems. So to me, the two main questions that we have is what schools we have and what schools we want, and how do we move to the schools we want, and what democracy we have and what democracy we want, and how do we move from the democracy we have to the democracy we want. Thank you.
Wow. So with these last words, we are going to thank our panelists, our organizers, Dr. Lim, and the excellent APSIO team, and all our friends here who've been supporting this panel, and all the participants. Thank you so much. We've learned today that democracy and inclusion is not just a given. It can be nurtured, taught, and practiced. And global citizenship education doesn't just give us knowledge, but the values and the skills and the courage to sustain open, participatory societies in this post-truth era. So a round of applause to all our participants and our panelists.
And I would say it can be done one school at a time, one community at a time. It can be done. It's a long process, but it can be done. Yeah.
Yes. On that positive note, thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give another big round of applause to our panelists and the moderator. Thank you. So we will now take a 30-minute coffee break. Please use this time to refresh yourselves and to network with other participants. After the break, we will continue with our concurrent sessions. This grand ballroom will be divided into 3 rooms. Room 1 will remain here with the large stage. Room 2 will be the middle section. Room 3 will be the section farthest from the stage. Please remember to take your belongings with you. After enjoying your coffee break, proceed to the room where your chosen session will take place. We also encourage you to visit the various exhibitions in the foyer during the break. Your active participation throughout the day is much appreciated. We will see you back at 11:30. Thank you.